Andrew Mackenzie is the managing director at the advertising agency Boomtown and joins us on how to launch an international brand into Africa, a challenge that many brands themselves and agencies are having to grapple with at the moment. And before we talk about a specific case study, and welcome to you, Andrew, a large number of foreign and international companies showing serious intent, and this is a good time, I would imagine, for brands to be looking north.
Very, very good time. You know, a global population statistics, 7 billion people in the world. More than 1 billion of those are based in Africa. Surveys telling us that 6 of the fastest growing economies, out of the 10 fastest growing economies, are actually in sub-Saharan Africa, which is amazing. And Africa, from a business potential, I think is the next growth node for brands to invest into.
One of the projects then that you've worked on is for the big international law firm Hogan Lovells. You talk about a strict international CI and brand guideline policy, but more importantly than that, you had to develop something that you call a believable Africa positioning.
Correct.
What is that and how did you do it?
We always base all of our creative on the underpinnings of a cultural insight, something that's relevant to the communities in the area. It becomes more challenging when you're dealing with multiple countries in the context of what we had to do here. So we did a lot of research into something that we could leverage and build off, and it ended up, the platform was built off an African proverb, being be a mountain or lean on one. It's got multi-disciplinary approach with regards to understanding in various countries, so it works across various geographic regions, and it's believable.
But how do you take a proverb and turn that into a brand communication positioning and strategy?
Yeah, it was actually quite an interesting challenge for us. Definitely, yeah. Interesting journey and a challenge as well, because of the strict CI guidelines, there are components of what Hogan Lovells does that are governed internationally. You've got to now take that and make it relevant to a context of those specific geographic regions in Africa. It's got to be believable.
So in other words, you've got to recognize cultural and geographic nuance in that respect.
Correct, 100% correct, yes.
So how do you do that?
Well, the proverb was one of them, but then the body copy and the positioning that went with it also reinforced it. It explained what Hogan Lovells were trying to do, but then also the visual element too, quite important too. I think a lot of companies will just go online, particularly brands working from an international perspective, and find a stock photograph and pop it in.
Well, let's talk about that. How did you deal with the visuality of the campaign?
We actually photographed specific individuals that were relevant to those regions.
How did you find those people?
We sourced them through our suppliers. We obviously got talent scouts that will find relevant people that link to those geographic regions.
So how do you find a relevant person to create the visual language which is applicable to the brand architecture?
Yes. So the visual language stayed the same. It was always a skyline element, but linked to each of the regions. So for instance, we launched in Nigeria, Kenya, and Johannesburg in South Africa. The skylines had to depict that. It would have been pointless taking Johannesburg skyline and using it in communication that was going on in Nigeria. So we used Nigerian information there and skylines, and in Kenya the same, Nairobi, the growing skyline of Nairobi.
You guys are well known at the agency for work in the FMCG space. Now you're working and also in the education space. Now you've been given a law firm to deal with. Is there a different approach to the way in which the law firm thinks about brand and how you've got to change your thinking about brand to match the discipline and the output of the firm itself?
I think there is, yes.
Not easy, huh?
No, not easy. For a law firm, it's reputation. It's reputation building, particularly for a new firm that's got international credibility but's relatively unknown in an African context. Hogan Lovells has been in Africa since 2013, but they're really on a strong drive now to solidify their footprint in Africa itself throughout the region. So reputation is a major driver in how they do that. But there are regulations and legalities with regards to how you can advertise law firms in Africa as well.
And that would have impacted on your media planning?
Definitely.
How did that work?
Our approach was impacted by it. You can't go traditional print media in a lot of instances. Nigeria, for instance, doesn't allow advertising of law firms in a print media application. So we had to think quite dynamically on how we would take that approach and what mediums we would use. From a marketing perspective and an approach. So a lot of eventing, a lot of PR that supports our drive. Okay,
2 quick things. The campaign launched towards the end of 2016. The response, you can tell us about that. But also, what's the big brand lesson for organizations wanting to perhaps follow a similar path?
I think you have to have a very clear understanding of the countries that you're landing in. get to understand what's going to resonate with the particular target market in those areas, and then be true to that. I think painting a picture of something that's false is only going to create a cautious approach from the target market.
And response so far?
So far, it's been incredibly good. There's a 225% uptake on the social media feeds. In the first launch month, 75% uptake on the website hits. So far it's been incredibly good. In fact, the return on investment on media spend, we got the results last week, also been incredibly good for the brand itself.
Andrew Mackenzie from Boomtown, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.